Alvin Foy III sentenced yesterday in Albany County Court after a tense hearing. Foy was smiling and laughing while Forney's sister read a victim impact statement. The judge criticized Foy for his body language and sent him out of the courtroom after claiming he was wrongfully convicted.
A young man sat in an Albany County courtroom and laughed. Not once, not nervously. He laughed while a young woman stood at a podium reading a victim impact statement about her sister. The judge stopped the entire proceeding, looked directly at the defendant, and told him for the record that this was actually happening in his courtroom. He gave 3 warnings. The third one ended with a corrections officer walking the defendant out of the room. The sentencing happened without him there.
One more time, Mr. Let your client know I'm about to send him back into the holding cell.
Chyna is just 3 weeks away from opening across the state.
Any individual with a shred of human decency would not laugh, regardless of whether he wanted to assert his innocence or not. He would not laugh and make a joke and slouch in the chair and act like this is a bus stop or a bodega or a park bench.
I was wrongfully convicted.
Take the defendant back into the courtroom.
I just
Or back
want
into
you
the
to know.
holding cell. Pull his pants up while you're doing it, please.
When you get back to your cell, I want you to
So
think
the
about
courtroom
what
doesn't have to observe that.
you
You want to address the court in the sense the defendant in his absence. Go ahead.
6 other witnesses said I wasn't there. You have 2 females said I was there that was on a FaceTime call.
Sir, we're not trying the case. The case has been tried. The jury was convinced beyond a reasonable doubt. Sir, you can't talk at the same time as I talk because the stenographer is going to take down my words. If you want your words recorded, you can't try to talk over me. The jury's already decided that issue, sir. Anything else you want to say to the court, sir?
Yeah. You're a biased judge and I can't wait to appeal and see my case. I'm innocent.
Is that why you were laughing throughout the statement by the
She was laughing
sister of... Is that why you were laughing, sir?
She was laughing at me. Think I'm
Anything else, sir?
Yes.
Go ahead, finish.
I'm innocent.
You've said that already.
I'm guilty.
Anything else?
So I come home, I'm innocent.
Stands before this court professing his innocence, and regardless of whether you admit to brutally murdering her, you wouldn't sit at sentencing and laugh about it.
I didn't do nothing.
That's, sir, your time to speak has ended. It's now the court's time to speak. If you can't conduct yourself appropriately, we'll send you back into the jail and I'll sentence you without you here. Here's the bottom line, sir. Anyone with a shred of human decency would not sit in the courtroom and laugh at the sentencing. One more time, Mr. Mills, let your client know I'm about to send him back into the holding cells. Any individual with a shred of human decency would not laugh, regardless of whether he wanted to assert his innocence or not. He would not laugh and make a joke and slouch in the chair and act like this is a bus stop or a bodega or a park bench.
I was wrongfully convicted.
Take the defendant back into the courtroom. Or back into the holding cells.
I ain't worried about it.
Pull his pants up while you're doing it, please. So the courtroom doesn't have to observe that. I'm going to sentence the defendant in his absence.
That courtroom moment is real. It is documented, and it is the reason this case deserves to be told completely from the beginning. This is the story of Chyna Forney, a track star, a step team captain, a shift manager, and an 18-year-old 3 weeks from her high school graduation who was walking down a residential street in Albany, New York on a Monday afternoon and never made it home. This is also the story of the 2 men responsible, the investigation that took more than a year to produce charges, and the trial that ended with one of the most extraordinary sentencing moments in Albany County Court history. If you follow cases where every layer matters, the victim, the investigation, the courtroom, subscribe to Mr. Crime X right now. We cover cases like this every week, and the details most coverage skips are the ones we go deepest on. Chyna Unique Forney was born on January 11, 2003, and grew up in Albany, New York, raised by her mother Shannon alongside her sister Nazaire and her brothers. She came up through Albany's public school system, Arbor Hill Elementary, then Hackett Middle School, then Albany Leadership Charter High School for Girls, one of the few all-girls charter schools in upstate New York. That school would become one of the loudest voices in her memory after she was gone. Athletics was where Chyna first found her rhythm. She joined the Just Run program at Arbor Hill as a child and carried that early love for running all the way through high school, competing in both indoor and outdoor track for Albany leadership. She was good enough that she planned to keep running in college. At her final sports banquet, her coach thanked her by name in front of the entire team. In 2013, when she was 10 years old, she joined the Tone Setters step team. She did not leave for 8 years. By 2017, she was the captain, a position she held through graduation. Part of a captain's job on a step team is teaching the routine to whoever cannot get it yet, running it again and again. Until everyone is locked in. That was Chyna's responsibility for years, and the people who stepped alongside her said she was patient with it and consistent at it. 2 years into her captaincy with the Tone Setters, she added a second team. She had joined the Too Hot For You dance team back in 2015 and was leading that program by 2016 as well, choreographing some of its routines herself. She was running 2 teams simultaneously while keeping up with school and track. She also worked. At 14, she landed her first job through Albany's Summer Youth Employment Program. By 18, she had worked her way up to shift manager at McDonald's, overseeing employees, some of them significantly older than her. She was still working that job the week she died. The plan after graduation was nursing, specifically travel nursing, a career that matched who she already was, someone who looked out for other people and showed up for them consistently. She had already applied to college, the acceptance was in, the program was lined up.
On May 1st, 2021, Chyna graduated from the Tone Setters after 8 years with the program. Photographs from that day show her surrounded by her teammates and family. She was smiling. She was 3 weeks from doing it again, this time in a cap and gown at her actual high school graduation. On the morning of Monday, May 3rd, 2021, Chyna went to school the way she always did. Before the day started, Albany Leadership's principal, Chyna Cook, pulled her aside for a conversation. They talked about graduation, her college acceptance, and the nursing program she was set to start. Chyna Cook later said she still saw that conversation in her mind when she thought about Chyna, a young woman with focus and determination who knew exactly where she was going. At approximately 2:50 that afternoon, Chyna left school and started walking toward a family member's house. Essex Street was a route she had taken before. She was not a resident of that block. She was passing through. What was happening on Essex Street that afternoon had nothing to do with her. 2 men had a dispute with another man, a specific individual who was the target of what was about to happen. At 2:50 p.m., shots were fired, 31 rounds in total. Over 40 shell casings were recovered from the pavement when investigators processed the scene. Several parked cars on the block were struck. The man who had been the intended target was hit in the shoulder. He was treated at a hospital and released. Chyna Forney was found in the road with a gunshot wound to her back. She was transported to Albany Medical Center. Doctors were not able to save her. She was 18 years old. Albany Police Department spokesperson Steve Smith addressed reporters and made a direct appeal to anyone who had been or near Essex Street that afternoon. He asked the community to work with investigators, pointing out that in homicide cases, reluctance to come forward made justice harder to reach. He said it plainly. This was not a TV show. This was real life, and the community and police had to work together. Anonymous tips could be submitted through Capital Region Crime Stoppers, giving people a way to come forward without their name attached. Victory Christian Church posted a $10,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. Within hours of the shooting, hundreds of balloons and lanterns were released into the sky over Albany in Chyna's honor. A memorial began forming on Essex Street. Flowers, photographs, handwritten notes from classmates who had seen her that morning and now had nowhere to put their grief. The following morning, Principal Chyna Cook canceled classes and posted a statement to Albany Leadership's page. She wrote that Chyna was a bright, shining light, that she had watched her grow from a bright-eyed freshman into a young woman with focus and determination. She noted Chyna's plans for college, her role on the track team, and the fact that just the day before she had sat with her and talked about her future. The school also committed to making counselors available both in the building and remotely for students who needed support. Investigators pulled surveillance footage from homes and businesses along Essex Street and began building a timeline of exactly what happened in those minutes before 2:50. Witness accounts were gathered. The footage was cross-referenced with those accounts. The work was methodical and it took time.
With Foy no longer in the courtroom, Judge McDonough sentences him to 25 years to life in prison. Foy won't be eligible for parole until 2046, when he'd be 44 years old.
Two names eventually surfaced: Alvin Foy III and Jahmere Manning, both Albany men, both connected to what happened on Essex Street. Albany police confirmed that Foy and Chyna had known each other. He was not a stranger to the Forney family. Investigators confirmed the original target had been a third man entirely, and that Chyna had been in the wrong location when 31 rounds were fired into a residential block on a Monday afternoon. What also came out during the investigation was a detail that added a specific weight to the legal proceedings against Manning. At the time of the Essex Street shooting, Manning was already out on bail, facing a separate charge for illegal possession of a weapon. The gun used on Essex Street was also illegally possessed. He was not legally allowed to have a firearm. He was in court for having one, and he went out and used one anyway. If you want to follow cases where the legal details are just as important as what happened on the street, subscribe to Mr. Crimex. We go through the full record on every case we cover, and this one had layers that most coverage never touched. Manning moved first. On October 21, 2022, Jahmere Manning appeared before Albany County Court and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. As part of that plea, he admitted on the record that he and Alvin Foy had fired 31 shots in the direction of a group of people on Essex Street on May 3, 2021, and that one of those shots killed Chyna Forney. Chief Assistant District Attorney Cheryl Fowler spoke after the plea was entered. She said the deal afforded Manning the decency and humanity that he had refused to show his victims. She also addressed what the court was seeing consistently, that people like Manning were not just harming individuals, they were dismantling their own community. On December 9, 2022, Manning returned for sentencing. The room was packed with Chyna's family and friends, many of them wearing shirts with her photo on them. Manning was sentenced to 20 years to life in state prison. His guilty plea also resolved the separate pending weapons charge he had been out on bail for at the time of the shooting. Alvin Foy III did not take a plea. He maintained that he was not on Essex Street that day and had nothing to do with the shooting. His case went to trial. Prosecutors built their case around two primary pillars: surveillance footage from the surrounding area that tracked movement before and during the shooting, and witness testimony placing Foy at the scene. On April 3, 2023, a jury found Alvin Foy III guilty of second-degree murder, attempted homicide, and criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree. He was remanded pending sentencing. Sentencing was scheduled for July 14, 2023. Chyna's family filled that courtroom again. Chyna Forney, Chyna's sister, stood at the podium to deliver her victim impact statement. She began by addressing Foy directly, reminding him that he had been inside their home, that he had shared meals with their family, that he had gone out with them as a group more than once, that she had expected better from him. That is when Foy started laughing. Judge Roger McDonald stopped the proceeding. He stated for the record that the defendant was visibly laughing during the victim impact statement. He gave Foy a warning. Foy continued, moving around in his chair, smirking, turning around. McDonald gave a second warning, then a third. When the behavior did not stop, he directed corrections officers to remove Foy from the courtroom and return him to the holding cell. He instructed officers to pull up Foy's pants on the way out. The sentencing continued without the defendant present. Judge McDonald sentenced Alvin Foy III to 25 years to life, the maximum available under law, for the murder of Chyna Forney. He said plainly that any person with a shred of human decency would not sit in a courtroom and laugh during a victim impact statement, regardless of whether they were asserting their innocence. Outside the courtroom, Foy's attorney Jasper Mills told reporters that an exchange between Foy and Nazaire as she approached the stand had set off his client's reaction. Mills acknowledged that the behavior was inappropriate. He also confirmed the defense intended to file an appeal. Albany did not let Chyna Forney become a case number and a closed file. Approximately 1 year after the shooting, the city of Albany officially renamed the stretch of Essex Street where she was hit. It is now known as Chyna Forney Way.
To you, Mark, and the city of Albany wanted to keep Chyna's memory alive, and here on Essex Street, it is now also known as Chyna Forney Way. And it's been just over a year since she was shot and killed, and there's still a small memorial over here where people can remember Chyna Forney. On Tuesday evening, Albany city leaders came to Essex Street to unveil Chyna Forney Way. Robert DePasquale lives on the street. He did not live on the street last year when the shooting took place, but he heard what happened.
I found out about it as soon as I moved to the area, and a lot of the neighbors had talked to me about it, discussed that with me, that how it had impacted them.
Robert says he and other neighbors are happy the city is remembering Chyna. Chyna was shot and killed on Essex Street last year on May 3rd. She was not the intended target. Jahmere Manning and
a street sign bearing her name now stands at the location where she fell. Not far from that sign, a mural covers the side of a nearby building. It reads Chyna's World, with her portrait painted alongside flowers in pink and teal, the colors of her step and dance teams. Robert DePasquale, a neighbor who moved to Essex Street after the shooting and heard the story from everyone around him, told reporters that he and the other residents were glad the city was making sure her memory stayed visible on that block. Bishop Avery Cathier, the pastor of Elijah Missionary Church where Chyna's funeral was held, described the unveiling of the street sign as a year of reflection. He said her memory was still present on that street. He said it was just unfortunate that a young woman with that much to offer was gone.
Alvin Foy III
is in a state prison cell serving 25 years to life, sentenced in absentia because he could not conduct himself with basic dignity in the courtroom where a family was trying to say what his actions had cost them. Jahmere Manning is serving 20 years to life, having admitted in open court that he and Foy fired 31 rounds into a residential block on a Monday afternoon. Manning was out on bail for a weapons charge when he did it. The gun he used was illegally possessed. Foy's appeal has been filed. No outcome has been made public. Chyna Forney was walking to a family member's house. That was the entirety of what she was doing on May 3, 2021. She had been at school that morning. Her principal had just told her how proud she was. She had a college acceptance, a nursing program lined up, and 3 weeks left before she crossed the graduation stage. She was not involved in the dispute that brought those two men to Essex Street. She was not the reason 31 rounds were fired. She simply happened to be on that block at that moment. And that cost her everything she had been working toward. What this case leaves behind is more than a court record. It is a street sign, a mural, a scholarship, and a step routine that still opens every show. It is a family that had to sit through 2 separate sentencing proceedings to get to a number that still does not add up to what they lost. And it is the question that cases like this one always leave open. Not just who pulled the trigger, but what kind of conditions allow a man already facing weapons charges to walk free, pick up another illegal weapon, and fire it into a residential street in the middle of the afternoon. Chyna Forney. Say her name. Subscribe to Mr. Crime X and turn on the bell. We cover the full story every time. The victim, the investigation, the courtroom, and everything that the headline leaves out. We will see you in the next case.